Okay, folks, just wanted to do a quick commentary on the final episode of She-Hulk. So, spoilers for the series if you haven't watched it. I'd actually give it a try if I were you. I would watch it and then realize that this is not a show that's going to stick the landing. But for the first 5 episodes, it's actually not that bad. If you take it to be what it actually is, which is, according to the show's own star, it's a legal comedy. It's not supposed to be an Avengers type show. It's not supposed to be Hawkeye, in other words. Hawkeye was like the greatest sequel to Avengers that there has been so far. It really captures the spirit of the Avengers movies. But She-Hulk isn't that. It doesn't try to be that. It doesn't want to be that. And, if you're looking for that, this is not your show. But if you do want sort of a sitcom that revolves around a lawyer who suddenly finds herself with Hulk powers and on account of that has to start doing superhuman law cases, then this is your show, and you just get to see some of the hijinks that ensue, and also there's a little bit of dramatic subplots, and the problem is that one of the features of the She-Hulk comic book series, as it was written by John Byrne in the sensational She-Hulk, was that she would break the fourth wall. She would start talking directly to the reader and talking and even talking to the creator, and start getting involved in various hijinks involving getting outside the fact that she was actually in a comic book. And the 6th episode of the series goes into that in a major way. Now, at the end of the 5th episode, and again, spoilers are coming, at the end of the 5th episode, Jennifer Walters is in jail and saddled with an inhibitor on account of the fact that she went ballistic at a law award ceremony where a group called the Intelligentsia plastered her private information, including sex photos of her, on the screen where they were giving the awards presentation. And so she just flew into a rage and hulked out and, trashed the place, and then she wound up going to jail on that account. So, because of her, the fact that she has no other prior criminal record, she just agrees to have a inhibitor put on, like an ankle bracelet type thing that will not keep her from changing necessarily, but at least will track her if she does change, and promises not to change into the Hulk again or into She-Hulk again. She winds up on that account. She winds up losing her job as the Hulk lawyer, and then has to go back home and start over. And she's basically lost everything. And her friends are trying to figure out and suss out who is the leader of this intelligentsia. Well, she goes on a retreat to where the Abomination has one of these spiritual, holistic, self-help kind of therapy centers. I know, if you haven't been watching the series, don't ask. And but she's defended him before, and he's said, my door's always open, so if you want to come by, come by. She goes there and discovers, along with her friends, who they don't realize they're all converging on the same place, that the Intelligentsia is this men's retreat type group that is actually being hosted at the Abomination's spiritual center. And the Abomination has, been changing back and forth in violation of his parole, and he's been helping this men's group, and the men's group leader is this guy who was trying to date her at one time, but he's like this brilliant venture capitalist guy, and he's basically envious of her getting her powers on account of being Bruce Banner's cousin, as opposed to getting her powers through some kind of merit. So he concocted this scheme where he got some guy to be an actor to fall for her and sleep with her and get a sample of her blood so that he could inject himself with Hulk blood and become a Hulk himself. And so the whole thing leads toward this giant climactic battle where you've got this guy who's newly hulked versus Jen, and then you've got the Abomination being there. All of a sudden, her cousin, Bruce Banner, the Hulk, comes back uh, onto the scene. How he got there, we're not quite sure. Then all of a sudden, her foe, Titania, shows up, and we don't even know why she's there. So you got this ridiculous convergence of all these, fighters. And finally, she just says, "Now hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. This is my show. This is not the kind of show that I want to have. I want to talk to Kevin Feige, who's the director of all things Marvel." And so she actually steps outside of the show. She actually steps out onto the Disney Plus screen and starts going into other portions of the Disney Plus, what's available there, and manages to find her way to Kevin, who turns out to be an AI robot. And between her and Kevin, they start negotiating how her episode is actually going to end in a way that's pleasing to her. And so the way the episode finally ends is that the abomination, or well, I guess the police arrive to arrest everybody. The Hulk blood turns out not to work on the guy. Either that, or they just dropped the Hulk blood thing altogether. And so they arrested the guy for showing her private information. Blonsky goes back to prison because you want to show accountability, and they bring Daredevil back, who she slept with in the previous episode, and make him into kind of a date boyfriend kind of thing at her family dinner. And then lastly, the Hulk arrives with his son Scar in tow, having found him on the planet Sakaar. So all of that happens, and that's the end of the show. And what I can't figure out is, why is it that, number one, they had to make what was happening, the way things were converging, they had to make that something stupid. And then when they got done negotiating that out of existence, what they left you with was something dull and boring. It's almost like they fell into their own trap. Because on one hand, they wanted to really poke, and I think it's actually been explicitly stated, that they really wanted to poke the eyes of all the trolls out there who were looking for this show to at least eventually become what has been the standard Marvel trope property, where you get everybody into a big fight at the end, and then might makes right and all that kind of stuff. But when you get to the actual end of the show, all you get is this bland mustard formula that, I swear there's this line by Matt Murdock where after the Hulk arrives with his new son in tow, who's a teen. I'm still trying to figure out the timeline on that one. And he says, "Wow, your family." And it's almost as if to say, that's really what this show is about family and friends and things like the interpersonal relationships. It's not really about the fighting. But it also can't really be about boredom either, and that's really what I was left with. And so in this big attempt to try and turn this show into something that would flip things on its head, all it did was really flip things, into bed, because it put me right to sleep. I don't know why they couldn't come up with something entertaining and interesting for the finale. Or why they couldn't have just continued in the same vein that they had been doing. Now, one of the things that they had put together very early on, I think this had showed up as early as episode number 2, was the Hulk blood thing. Okay, how can you get rid of that? You actually had the Wrecking Crew come and attack She-Hulk to try and get a sample of her blood, and then you had this actor put up to sleeping with her so that he actually could get a sample of her blood, and then the last episode has nothing about that now? You just toss that completely out as a storyline? That makes no sense at all. And that's really the problem that I have, is that with how She-Hulk ended, is that it ended in a way that doesn't make any better sense than the way that you were going to end it, where people were showing up out of the blue and it was all just one big coincidental fighting free-for-all. Instead, you totally excised an important storyline and said, okay, we're just going to tie up little neat bows on these stories, and we're not going to show you, we're not going to give you any sense of real completion. You had a chance to really stick the landing on this one, and you didn't. And I feel like it just made watching the whole show into a complete waste of time. I mean, I would have thought that had the 6th episode just been as entertaining and as different as the other 5, everything would have been fine. Because I'm sure you could have come up with a way to make the whole Hulkblood thing, the whole Hulkblood storyline resolve itself in some way that was more conducive. Like, let's say that, the Hulkblood worked on Banner and on her in a certain way, but on this guy it worked in a different way. Either that, or why not bring in the actor from The Incredible Hulk who played the leader and make him the big reveal, make him the bad guy at the end. He wanted to get more Hulk blood to supercharge his brain, just like the Abomination serum and the Hulk blood in The Incredible Hulk started working on him. That was something that was never really explored, but it was going to be if they ever did another Hulk movie. So this would have been a great time to reintroduce him. And it just seemed like such a wasted opportunity. And it's so unnatural to pull that Hulk blood storyline completely out of the Matrix and then, replace it with really nothing. And not only that, but like Blonsky, okay, why would you show in the beginning, before the revised, well, even after the revised timeline, after the revisions she made with the robot, why was Blonsky helping this guy in the first place? Why would he do that? I mean, Jen had gotten him out of jail and allowed him to pursue the spiritual center of his dreams, along with all the women who were fawning in adoration. Why would he turn on her? That doesn't make any sense. Why would he break his parole? That doesn't make any sense either. And this was something that was the same before and after the robot got involved and they negotiated out their new ending. So, I mean, that doesn't make that it just didn't make any sense. Not only that, but she wanted him to go back to jail for the sake of accountability. Well, what happens in the after credits scene? Wong comes and breaks him out of jail and takes him to Camertage. Well, that's accountability for you. Your friend comes and breaks you out of jail. There was really nothing good about how that show ended. Which is sad, because everything up to that point had been fine. It was a good, decent quality show for what it was, trolls notwithstanding. And if you wanted to poke the trolls in the eye, all you had to do was just keep giving us more of the same that you had already given us. More of the same good quality show that you had already given us. But instead, we got this contrived mess that, while being cute here and there and having its nice laughs, just ended up in being a bland puddle of goo on the floor that, is only good enough for being mopped up and thrown in a pail and just thrown out in the gutter somewhere. She-Hulk had the potential to be something really good and really different. And in striving to be that to the nth degree, it ultimately failed in its mission. And it became something, that we've seen before. That we've literally seen before, because that's basically what happened with Dallas. Dallas managed to work its way into a corner, and then what did they do? Bobby shows up in the shower. Oh, everything for the last 3 years has been all a dream. That's been pretty much the way that this episode of She-Hulk went. And it's sad, because, I thought it was fulfilling its potential nicely. And then it just gave it all up for the sake of trying to poke trolls in the eye. I don't know. Maybe it'll come back for a second season, but if it never does, I couldn't care less at this point. I'm Mike Partika. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.